All right, so I want to talk about how to create new mental habits or how to create new neural pathways. So basically, the visualization I want you to have is that we're working with your brain. So you picture the brain, it's got all those electrical signals going around, and we need to create a new pathway for those electrical signals. Now, it's possible that we might already have a pathway there and it's just got some resistance and we just need to run through it a bunch of times. Or it's possible that we need to create a totally new pathway, create a new connection, and then reinforce our brain's familiarity with it. So, what I want you to visualize is we've got a record player, and on that record player, we've got a record sitting there, and we're trying to cut new grooves into that record. So, we've got an existing song, it's playing the song. We don't really like the song it's playing, and so we want to make some new music. So, we're going to start cutting some new grooves, and because it's the only tool we have, we're actually going to use the needle of the record player to create that new groove. Now, the first time you go through and try to create that new groove, obviously it's not going to go very far. Second time, again, it's just getting in there. And if it gets bumpy and that record player shifts, it's going to be pretty easy for the needle to hop into the old pathway. So, what we need to do is create that new pathway, and then we need to go through repetitions and reinforce that new pathway. Likewise, imagine a wagon going through a forest. So, I picture this in like the 1800s or something, and we're going through this forest, and there's these grooves in the pathway in the forest where the wagon's been going back and forth for years and years and years. Now, for some reason, we decide we want to take actually a slightly different path and we just want to go off to the side a little bit and we want to start working on that new path. And what happens is we've got these old grooves here and we've got our new grooves and we're trying to go through this new pathway. And what do you think happens when it starts raining, when it gets stormy? Of course, we slide back into that old path if we're not extremely careful. You can also think of it like driving in the snow. So when there's tracks in the snow, if you've ever driven in the snow, if you're in Canada like us, then you know there's a very strong pull into the existing tracks. It's very hard to carve a new path. And so, whichever analogy of those resonates most with you, create that visual for yourself and get yourself in the mindset of creating those new grooves. Realize that you're going to have to spend that extra time and attention to reinforce that new pathway. And until that new pathway is just as deep or even deeper than the old pathway, it's still possible to slip back into the other pathway, especially when life gets messy, when it gets rainy, etc., etc. So work on creating that new pathway. Don't take your attention off until that new pathway is fully created, and make sure you've got that new groove fully reestablished so that you can trust that you are going to be able to stay in the new groove and that the old groove has filled in, it's become unfamiliar, and we're no longer in the habit of those old habits. This is why lifestyle change takes 12 to 18 months. You've got that new habit, it can be created pretty quickly, but when life throws you curveballs, when stuff goes crazy in life, it's hard to stick with it. And this is where that 12 to 18 months comes in. It takes time to create that new pathway to eliminate the old grooves.